for the past 20 years in technology. My company set up the entire web presence for the government of Rwanda, and I've been very active in the web presence area. A lot of what I did in that industry, I didn't have a lot from school. What I studied in school and how I came to manage my business, knowledge from school was this small.
So what you're saying is, these people saying school, it's not really that
It equipped
important.
me with the basic
Yes.
in technology, but I had to build the business acumen in me to be able to grow technology. So government would give you challenges, or a businessman will give you a challenge and say, I want, this is what I'm facing as a challenge, and I want you as a technologist to solve this.
So what will the private sector offer? You know, as government gives you this challenge, what is the private sector offering as an answer or as a solution?
At the Rwanda ICT Chamber, which I happen to represent here, we have four major objectives. One, of course, is advocacy. She talked about regulation.
Yes.
Another one is getting market for our companies, the companies that are within the chamber, and those are local markets and international markets. Then identifying areas of financing for the companies that want to grow technology, and human resource and capacity building.
Okay.
Those are the four areas
that
in
you're
the
offering.
chamber that we are offering for our members. So we try to identify where the markets are, that those markets our members can respond to. We get financing for them, and then we do also capacity building and innovation. That's why we have the K-Lab, which is one of the biggest projects that we have been able to build. We are the youngest chamber in the private sector federation, but we've been able to achieve enormous milestones in a period of only 4 years.
We'll talk about those milestones a bit later on, but let me bring in Mushimire, because he's been silent from the time we started, saying, you know, when we were giving him the welcoming remarks. But are you a member, first of all, of the private sector?
I'm actually a member.
You're a member?
Yes.
So being seated then between the policymaker and the private sector federation, what are those things that you feel young innovators like you need from the policymakers and the private sector to be able to advance the innovations?
Very first, I'll start by actually thanking the policymakers. They've done a tremendous amount of work if you compare Rwanda versus other countries in Africa. And recently, for example, I was with Ford, went in Japan, exactly working on this very same issue of trying to not only start entrepreneurship here, but learning from people who do and who do best. So on that particular area, like policies have really
So you need nothing from Minister
No,
Philbert?
I don't mean I don't mean.
So can you stand up and walk away?
No, I first want to acknowledge the fact that they've done a tremendous amount of work. They've set up policies that make it easy to start businesses. They've set up regulatory and legal actually frameworks that support us as innovators. And the ICT Chamber of PSF helps us. However, we still have some challenges, and those challenges, as Carissa have said, needs to be addressed in order to promote entrepreneurship.
What are those challenges?
So entrepreneurship, in the very first place, it's not just me doing this thing for fun. I see a challenge, I come up with a solution, and I want people to be able to access.
Mushimire, you're not answering the bullet point of my question.
Yes, please.
What are those challenges?
So the challenges we have for the moment relate to, for example, low penetration of internet in Rwanda. That's one of the challenges we have. The second challenge we have is internet and prices. And the third one is the lack of even, for example, local content. We don't have any local content. And if you compare all of this and see, you actually find a very easy pattern. Policies have been put in place. Entrepreneurs came up with ideas, but we only work on this for a certain amount of time, and then, all startups fail. The minister himself.
So the key of them is, one, penetration.
Yes.
Two, accessibility and cost.
Yes, exactly.
Let's talk about that. Those three particular issues. From the policy part of it, Honorable Philbert, what can be done, or what is being done to deal with those particular three areas of concern for young innovators in Rwanda?
Let me start with penetration. I think I agree with Mushimire that it's still a challenge, because when you talk about 30% penetration of just basic internet and probably 10% of broadband penetration, is still very low. However, we need to look at where we are coming from. This is a field that is doubling almost every year. We are growing exponentially. Just go on our website and look at our last 3 years report on ICT sector profile. You realize that back in just in 2012, we're below 10. By 13, we go up to 16. By 14, we go to 25. By now, we are above 30%. So it's a challenge, but we are actively working to meet that challenge. And penetration is actually a result of two things. One is the ability of people to have devices. And secondly, the ability of, there is the cost of going smart and the cost of staying smart, the bundles, the ability for people to get the relevant content at which cost. And there is also some in the mix, the question of digital literacy, as we was talking about this morning. So if you can resolve these three challenges, the energy, the content, and the literacy, then you can probably go to 100% penetration levels. So we have programs under each and every one of those aspects. So it's a challenge, but challenge is what get us going. That's what get us wake up in the morning and pick up our pieces and go, run to work.
So what's the assurance then for that person watching right now and having had those challenges that you mentioned and you also agree that are available? What assurance can you give them in terms of what's being done so far today, practically speaking?
I'd like to look at this, as two sides of the same coin, two aspects of same problem. Yes. It's not about what the government does only. It's also about the response that people give. This environment is about how people take advantage of it. And I can tell you that the market has been responding phenomenally well. When, for instance, mobile money technology came up back in 2010, we ended up the year with less than 200,000 subscribers. The next year was 500. The next year was 1,400,000. The following year was 3,300,000. By now, we are more than 6.8 million subscribers of these mobile financial services. So the market is responding well. Let me also talk about the affordability thing,
yes.
because it's very closely related to penetration. We know the income levels of our people. We know the GDP per capita. We know that people are spending on communication almost the equal amount of money they spend on food. So communication is essential, it's vital. But the affordability is not in absolute terms, it's in relative terms. So for instance, when people say that internet is expensive, people need really to understand how much does it cost and be able to compare in the region and globally. So I'd like to report that there was a report by the Alliance of Affordable Internet that ranked Rwanda as number one among 51 emerging economies in terms of internet affordability. We are not happy because everyone cannot afford. But I'm happy that Facebook, for instance, is responding to that need of that person who's been kept out of being connected by that factor of cost. Now there is a whole range of very relevant content that is available even to those people who cannot afford to buy a bundle. And thank you, Facebook.
Actually, throwing the baton back to Ebele, because you're a daughter of Nigeria, you're a daughter of Africa, because when people hear that you're from Facebook, you're working with Facebook, they're like, oh, she's out there, but you're an African. And these issues we're talking about here are also issues that are shared. There's shared challenges and, of course, shared solutions to these particular challenges. Could you just briefly talk to us about how you're dealing with those particular three issues from where you come from?
Yeah, sure. So I keep going back to all of these problems are very complex, and so they lend themselves to a variety of different solutions. So one, for the issue of access or internet penetration, we know that operators like Airtel, all the operators operating here in Rwanda, have done a really great job in terms of building infrastructure. We also know that infrastructure often is concentrated around urban areas and not necessarily in rural areas. But given what population spread is across Africa, a lot of population is in rural areas. So one of the things that we're doing as Facebook is partnering with other organizations and doing a couple of things. One, looking at the use of satellite, because satellite can provide backhaul from an operator's perspective, it's often just not economically feasible to lay fiber all the way out in rural areas. But this is where satellite can come in. We're also, and so we've just announced a partnership with Telsat starting 2016, where we will start in partnership with operators providing affordable internet in rural areas. There's also many of you have heard of drones, but we have announced Aquila, which is an unmanned terrestrial airplane. An unmanned airplane that allows, again, internet access to be provided from the plane. So it takes the pressure off of fiber. It takes the pressure off of infrastructure. And then finally, we also have a solution called Express Wi-Fi, where we're working in some peri-urban areas and working directly with small entrepreneurs so that they can provide Wi-Fi as a way for them to make money and also to provide internet to more people. So I think we're also looking. What we're doing as a company is looking at all of the different potential barriers. So there's cost, there's infrastructure, there's Free Basics, which really looks at the issue of whether or not people think that something is relevant. And I should also mention that we're, along with Free Basics, we're also offering Platform. And Platform allows local content producers to create content for that platform so that it can be zero rated, so that we have not just Facebook and not just global content, but we have local content where you have local people who know the market well and can create products for that platform. So I'd say those are some of the things that we're working on. Again, always in partnership. We cannot do this alone. We're always in partnership with local people, always in partnership with great government to provide to people who to make internet much more affordable.
Because you mentioned the issue of content, and Mushimire earlier on said that's part of the problem we're having. We don't have enough content. But of course, we'll be checking through some of the comments that are coming through thick and fast right here. We have some tweets coming in. We have MIR who is saying that how do you tackle digital illiteracy to achieve the 95% goal by 2017? I think this is a very key question that could be answered by you, Phil.
95% is population coverage of 4G LTE.
Yes.
I'm not saying that it's 95% of the population that will be digital literate. That is not possible, Anangwe, because more than almost half of our population is even under the age of 16. So when you talk about population, we talk about the 11.7 million Rwandans. So the population coverage is what we are aiming for.
Yes.
But what you want is the people under that coverage, being covered by 4G LTE and not use it is such a waste.
Yes.
So we actually want those people to actually effectively be using broadband. And it is going in tandem with issues to do with the access. As I said, power is very important. Devices consume power, and they need to be powered. So there are opportunities when it comes to off-grid solutions, green energy solutions, to go power those homes out there in the rural area so that they can be able to make sense of those opportunities.
Too many opportunities actually for the private investors. Coming up with gadgets that can be able to, have alternative sources of power, when it comes to charging, when it comes to all those other things. Are we really taking advantage of this, or we're still chilling for someone else to come and do all this kind of opportunities?
Before I answer that,
yes.
Let me advise that we don't drown ourselves in the thinking that there is too much less digital literacy to be able to adopt the technology. Because when you talk about digital literacy, it's relative. You need to understand how much literacy is enough to consume technology.
How much is enough?
And so my grandmother in the village never went to school. She does not know how to read and write. But she knows how to answer a phone. And she knows this is how a phone comes in and this is how it goes out. And she knows to call my niece and be able to say, can you WhatsApp my son in London to send me something? She's actually consuming technology. She never went to school. So we need to understand how much technology is enough. All the housemaids that we have here in Africa, the culture of housemaids and house helps, these are people who have not made it in higher academic levels to be able to attain education enough to give them employment other than being housemaids or being house helps. And today, when he earns the first salary, he wants to go get a smartphone. Most of them are on Facebook. Most of them are on Twitter. These people never acquired education enough to be able to be called technologically literate.
So in other words, before you go further, because we need to take a short break, what you're saying is those who are worried that we have a lot of technological illiteracy probably should
I don't
not
want to
have
agree
worry.
with them that the responsibility is with the private sector. What he called a challenge, I call it an opportunity. Let's build content.
I think that's a great point.
Let's build content. You can't stand and say we do not have content. Who provides content? Facebook is giving us content. We should feel that we need to give Facebook a greater contribution by providing one-on content that can be aligned to a Facebook platform. So whoever wants to access this content using an already established and very well known and very easy to use Facebook, he can be able to get the one-on content. But it's not a challenge. It's actually an opportunity.
It's an opportunity. The question is, are we going to really tap into that? Phil,
no,
just hold that thought.
I was going to say that it's a great point because the same challenge. Providing somebody with a smart device, it can actually be used to teach that person. First of all, there are contents which lend themselves to low literate, if you may allow me to use that term. People who don't know how to read and write, but they can recognize a picture, they can recognize movement, they can create something. If it's a farmer who needs a market for the produce, you can draw a market, you can draw the crop that they can select and click, and then for one, everyone is enumerate because I've never seen anybody asking help to count money. So numbers people are very good at that, and you can build on that, plus the ability to design contents, multimedia contents that can respond to the needs of those, and in the same process, elevate or increase the level of literacy that people have.
So the buck now stops with content providers and creators. Is that what you're saying?
That's us to do.
Okay.
That's where our money is.
I'll come back to you after this very short break. We need to take a breather and, of course, come back to read some of the tweets that are coming through and, of course, some Facebook comments that are coming through. Keep tweeting. All you need to do is tweet at Debate411 or use the hashtag Debate411. If you can, we're adding a new hashtag right here. How do we transform digitally? And of course, the hashtag is transforming digitally. Talk to us, share your thoughts. What are your concerns? What are your questions from far as issues of policy are concerned, the private sector, your own role in advancing this digital technological advancement? Talk to us as we definitely look into these issues even more when we come back from the break. Stay with us.
So Natasha, are we cornering our teachers? Exactly. Are we being unfair to them?
At the end of the day, Fiona also mentions that the more you show them this condom, the more you're opening up their minds to having sex.
But do you feel well represented? Do you think the media issues are well taken to the table when it comes to advocacy? How do we convince them and say that we shut it down because you exceeded the limits?
The word conservation looks just complicated, but how do we simplify this?
What role do our schools play then? And the people around our children, what role can they play in order to avoid these children becoming a menace in the society?
Yes. Caroline, you just want to sound moral, but you're just not accepting the reality on the ground.
Well, I want to sound moral and encourage it and practice it.
This is an EA production.
And welcome back. Thank you so much for being with us on Debate 411. Of course, the conversation is going on even when we are off air. Sorry for you couldn't get to know or hear what we were saying earlier on. You could have picked some of it when we're coming back on here. But thank you so much for being with us. This is Debate 411. My name, as always, is Eugene Anangwe. Now, we're talking about accelerating digital innovations. And how can we do that? That's the key question we're talking or asking ourselves right here. And of course, thank you so much for being with us. Before we went for the break, the gentlemen were talking, and they were talking too much. Clarice was so silent right here. As a content provider and, of course, a solution provider through IT and technological advancement, do you feel that you are really, really, really ready to take advantage of this particular issue that we're talking about, the content issue that, our friend Mushimire was talking about? That content is not there. But Minister is saying that the ball is actually now in the court of the content providers. How do we answer this pertinent question?
Like you mentioned, we've been at this for a while and building mobile applications, trying to connect people to relevant information. And what I can say has been the most challenging thing for us is constantly trying to adapt technologies to fit our context. And everybody talked a bit about it, whether it's something to do with connectivity, cost. All of these are ways that we are trying to make these technologies, whether it's a smart device or internet, fit the context of, our grandmothers or, our parents who are trying to use these technologies, the farmers that we mentioned. And for me, what scares me most is the fact that we are continuing on this trajectory. How can we make internet work more for us? Are there no other protocols that exist that are advantageous to, let's say, people living close to the equator? Have we done research on this and looked for alternatives? Because, yesterday it was 2G, we moved to 3G, then it's 4G. It will always be a cost on our country, it will always be a cost on our people to adapt to the latest technology to make it work for us. So are we asking ourselves these questions? And I would just like us to sort of think about that, because...
Before you go there, are you asking yourself this question from policy point of view, Phil?
Absolutely.
And what answers do you come up with? What thoughts ring in your head?
Well, first we need to build the capacity to be able to perform the kind of research and development that Clarice is talking about. It's very critical because Africa has always been playing this catch-up game, adapting to what has been conceptualized and designed for other markets, for other cultures. So I think she's asking a very fundamental question, and it goes with education, it goes with understanding. And I think we are there in terms of understanding that science, technology, engineering, mathematics is the foundation that we need to build that capacity on. And we are starting not in a big way, but we are doing the right things, putting policies in place, making the investment, bringing the right kind of partners in place. And we are even looking beyond what, trying to leapfrog what other people have gone into. For instance, ending up with a technology field that is dominated by male. So we are encouraging right from the beginning young girls to go into science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
But if indeed science is really important for us, Clarice earlier on mentioned as a challenge that we are not seeing a lot of investment being put in research in terms of R&D. I mean, when we talk of let's set up this budget, going out to doing this particular research, for example, what you mentioned about the equator and stuff, how are we dealing with this, Minister? How are we putting this into action when we're saying that science is really key, but where is the money, where is the finance, or how much is it, and is that enough, what we're putting? Are we happy with that in terms of those who want to, deal in these innovations and they want to do research? There's a kitty for you. Come. This will support you, move your innovation further from just the thought that you have in your head. How are we dealing with that?
Building a capacity for research and development is not a cheap or affordable thing. It takes money, and we find ourselves in a situation where we have one pool of resources that need to be shared among so many things that are priority.
Yes.
Some of them give immediate payoff, and some of them are long-term bets. Like science, technology, research are very long-term bets, and you need to find a balance there. But look at what His Excellency the President is doing, sending as many Rwandans as possible to go in those institutions, those schools that have developed already that capacity. And we are banking and betting on those people to come back and initiate the capacity building back here in the country. Look at the efforts to establish institutes like, the College of Science and Technology, the different departments in the University of Rwanda focusing on science, technology, and mathematics. All those are efforts that are aimed. The long-term vision is one day we are going to be able to close that gap. But it's not something that you can achieve overnight. Meanwhile, what becomes also very important, urgent, is to be able to leverage the existing technologies that have been developed by others. It's one thing to develop the capability to build a car from scratch. All the engineering that the guys have put in over the last 150 years, trying to recreate that. Or just pick up the car and drive, move from your home to the market, sell something, make money, buy another car, give a car, the ability to move to as many people as possible, as you still build the capacity to understand how the engine works.
Is that what we're doing, practically?
That's what we're doing.
We're doing that? Yeah. Robert, is that what you're doing?
Just complement what you were saying, maybe what government is doing. We have Carnegie Mellon, which is one of the finest universities in the world that has come here. But again, I go back to the research and development we are talking about. There are certain things I believe government should concentrate on. There are certain things I believe government should not even spend a coin on.
Like which ones?
And like cybersecurity. When you talk about this whole technology hitting us left, right, and center, there are certain things that transcend the capacity of an ordinary citizen to be able to mitigate. Things like cybersecurity need to be handled at a higher level. But I don't believe that there should be a specific school right there teaching people that tomorrow we're going to be having a smartphone, and so when it comes, please get ready and get certifications for ABC. Let the smartphone come. The citizen is going to use it. The smartphone is a research and development center. Teaches him everything. When you look at the evolution of the first mobile phone, I owned the first mobile phone in 1998. That's the first time I owned a telephone. The services that phone had that amazed me is that it could be able to save 100 contacts. That would full capacity, and I would be able to send an SMS and call. Those were 3 services, and it was so large, and I kept it, and I looked fancy and cozy. Today, I am using it for banking. I'm using it for finance. I'm using it for God knows what.
So there's been a lot of advancement.
I never went to school for that.
Yes. And you didn't need anyone to teach you how to do that.
No one taught me how to do that.
Yes.
I still use it.
Yes.
I don't want government to spend money there. But let government spend money on mitigating a security threat that could come in my mobile phone and destroy everything or get my data and use it for something else. That I can't do. I need someone to go to university to do that. And Dr. Morenis talked about this earlier in the sessions in Transform Africa, when he said investment in producing PhDs and master's degrees in computer science and in technology is enormous. We won't afford that. He was very clear about that. The world can't afford that, even the world. It's very expensive to produce a PhD in computer science. It's about 200,000. If you are to get people who would support the technology today, you need about 100 million people. If you get 100 million people times 200,000 to produce that, and it's long term, you're investing this money over a period of 3, 4, 5 years. It's a lot of money. What I need government should do now is look at the bottom edge of technology and say, how much is it that the ordinary citizen cannot be able to do? Deal with that. Content, let the citizen produce that.
Okay, super. Yes. Ebele, you have a good compliment coming through from Rurangwa Gerald, who's saying we appreciate the job done by Facebook. I think they're already happy about the announcement that was made today. But of course, as you come in to either say thank you or say you're happy about that comment, I'd like you to tell us about this issue of the protection, because and how it's easy to deal with it, or how it should be dealt with. Because he says government should deal more in such areas. But as Facebook, I mean, what lessons can we learn probably from the way you deal with these issues that are of concern for people who use these particular platforms?
Yeah, so can I step back before I answer that? Because I actually think the conversation that we've been having now about research is a really important one. And I think we're talking about 2 different things. There's the research that's related to being a consumer. And there I agree, you don't necessarily need. But my dream for countries across the continent is not to be consumers. It's for us to be creators of content. And for that, it's necessary to do some of the research and do some of the investment that Pace was talking about. I'm not speaking on behalf of Facebook in this moment, but I think this is where partnerships between private and public sector are really important, because if you look in other countries, I mean, you look in the U.S., you look in Europe, it is where you have government working together with the private sector to try and fuel some of this research, because again, we do not want all of our countries across the continent to only be consumers. We want to be creators. To your point about safety, I think there are when we talk about safety, there are a lot of different categories. I mean, when it comes to one of the questions that we're asked is, so if you bring in all these new people online and people who aren't sort of used to the internet, what are we doing related to safety? I think there's a huge component for education, and it's something that Facebook has worked with government. We've worked with NGOs, local NGOs, and one of our missions across Africa is really to help build local capacity on issues of safety online.
So this is work in progress?
Yes, it's definitely work in progress, but I think that there are some organizations we've already started working with, and we only hope to work with more around educating consumers around using the platform, keeping themselves safe online, understanding that there are potential risks, but also balancing those off with the benefits.
Super. I've always had problems with my friends on Facebook. They always say, you'd never read our comments. I have Molinda Joe Joseph. I'm reading this because we have only 1 minute to go, but I'm going to say it very fast. You say, first of all, I'd like to thank you for the great show and great topic. My question is for the Minister. What strategies are there to accelerate digital opportunities in rural areas, not only to access Facebook in Kenya, Rwanda, but also to install digital infrastructure to make money out of digital opportunities? I think this will be your final parting shot as you answer this question.
Rural areas need to be connected. Yes. So we are getting there. 95% coverage of 4G LTE by 2017 is a target, and we are moving. Now Kigali is connected, 13 other cities are connected, and we are on course. Secondly, we are decentralizing these spaces. You know, innovation largely in the cities have happened because there is an environment that has been put together, places where young people can meet and discuss and meet mentors, you know, get inspiration. The story of K-Lab and the other many innovation labs that have come up after it tell the whole story. Now the next step for K-Lab or for any innovation hub centered here in Kigali is to hear it, open a branch in Nyamasheke, Nyaruguru,
decentralization.
Decentralization.
Okay, that's the medicine. Thank you so much. Clarice, you want to say a quick word as we go?
Yes, I'll just briefly say that speaking to what you mentioned on research, we cannot sacrifice our future for short-term benefits. So we might feel like it's expensive. We might feel like we need to, worry about that right now. But at the end of the day, it's going to be expensive for us in the future if we do not think about that. And maybe I'll just conclude by saying that because we cannot ignore the need for research and innovation. And as Africa, my dream for me is for one day to see us launch out innovations that are homegrown, that spread out around the world, like what Facebook is doing today and right now.
Why don't you talk about Nuntu?
I mean, we're working at it. Just like the minister mentioned, Nuntu is a digital content platform that's focusing on African content, and simply because we're trying to give African content a place it can call home, because it gets lost in all these thousands and billions of applications that exist from around the world. But we need things that are that really do speak to the African context. We're not talking about reinventing the wheel, but we're talking about building solutions that are from Africans, that really do fit
for
our
Africans.
Context for Africans,
so
and
these
not
are
just
opportunities.
Not just copy paste something that's been done elsewhere.
They're shouting my ear, time is up, but of course we have to go. This conversation has to go on, right?
Yes.
Are you on Twitter?
I'm on Twitter.
Are you on Twitter?
Yes.
On Twitter, of course.
Yes.
On Twitter?
No. Yes.
On Twitter. So let's continue this debate after here, okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Without saying the last thing you wanted to say.
Because I'm being chased. The news has to come on air now. Yes.
I am for research and development.
Yes.
But for all the innovations we have done in Rwanda,
yes.
talk of K-Lab, talk of many things that I have known in Rwanda, that have been born in Rwanda.
Yes.
I do not know any research and development school
they're cutting you
that
out.
they went to.
Yes.
They just had ideas, they developed.
Oh, it's not a school.
Okay. Let's go on online, okay? Let's go on with this conversation. Thank you so much for watching. Of course, this is Debate 411. The conversation has to always continue. Use the hashtag Debate411 or tweet us at Debate411, or you can tweet me directly at Eugene and Nangwe. Thank you so much. Let's stay innovative. Goodbye and good luck.
Okay, if you allow, I just actually have an idea.
This is an EA production.